Scott Kurtz, you've got a story for us about AI. What's going on over there?
Yeah, I found a ethical use for artificial intelligence when it comes to my art. We're putting together a Kickstarter that's only 5 years late, and we're basically collecting every PvP in the definitive collection of hardcover books. Problem is, in 1998, I did not know PvP would make it to 20 years, 25 years. So I didn't really save really good high-res versions of all the strips. And for some of my early strips in 1998 to 2000, all we have is the GIF. Or the GIF.
No.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And when we printed the Awesomology, when we did the 10-year collection, 1998 is maybe a handful of strips. It's not everything that's on the website.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to the good people in the manga and anime community, there's an AI program that will take low-res stills of animes and use AI to upgrade them to high def so you can use them as backgrounds for your desktop wallpaper.
Seriously?
And it's specifically designed to, they do this with photos where the AI goes, oh, you have this really low-res photo, I'll make it a high-res photo for you using AI.
Yeah.
Right.
But the weeaboos and the waifus, Senpai and Kohai, they figured out how to do it with drawings.
Oh my
Scott,
God.
are you saying somewhere out there's a 17-year-old anime fan that has saved your bacon?
Yeah. Somewhere out there, there's a kid who decided they needed their I'm going to date myself with my anime knowledge. With their Evangelion fan club, they needed a high-res version of one of the angels.
Yeah.
They only had a GIF or a GIF, depending.
So is the results good? I mean, are you getting good stuff out of this?
It's crazy. Yes.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, it takes a really fuzzy, especially the black and white stuff. The really cool thing about the color stuff is you can hike the contrast up on it, and it essentially removes all that super compressed, low res, grainy color, and just gives you clean black lines. The only part where it really doesn't know what to do is with text, but it still does a pretty damn good job.
Wow.
Well, hold on. Does this mean that all those years that we were calling bullshit on CSI when they would say enhance, like we're now in that world?
Yeah, like now. Yeah, it didn't exist.
Right,
that's
that
what.
World.
Yeah, like well, they wouldn't say enhance, but they would say, "Why don't you run through the AI?" But I don't know if that would be admissible in court. Now I think about it, that's interesting.
This goes back to my theory that porn is the driver of all technology, because as you know, in hentai, they a lot of times pixel out the body parts. This was probably a way to get those body parts back. I don't know about hentai porn, Brad. Tell me about it. Listen, how much time do you have?
And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about Brad's proclivities for hentai and making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/ComicLab. So Dave and Scott, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. I'm very excited to welcome everybody to episode 85 of Webcomics Weekly. Joining us today is Scott Kurtz.
Hey.
I actually don't know how high we got. Did we get up to around 80, 85?
I can find out in a short while because I've got them all at webcomics.com.
We did more than 85.
Oh, I don't know that we ever hit triple digits, I'll be honest.
Well, regardless, for those new to the show, Scott joined us. Scott was co-host with Brad and I and Chris Straub on 4 or 5 years worth of Webcomics Weekly.
Yeah.
The podcast that we used to do in parallel with our book, How to Make Webcomics, that came out, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
But for those not familiar, you can find Scott's work, and Scott, tell me if I have this wrong, ToonhoundStudios.com, which has a link to all of your works, PvP,
Yeah, that is correct.
Cable Titans, That is the whole thing. So toonhoundstudios.com is where you want to go. And how are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing really, really well. I'm in the middle of finishing up the first of 2 middle grade graphic novels that I'm doing for Holiday House Publishing that'll come out next year, and pretty much nothing else because it's hundreds of pages of graphic novel I've got to get done. So that's where all my time is spent these days. But
and just out of curiosity, how fast are you going right now? Like in this week, how many pages will you produce this week?
I'm doing I'm in a crunch because I'm behind on my deadline, so I am crunching at 52 the way I used to at 25, and it is not as fun at 52 years of age as it was when I was in my 20s. But I'm doing 3 or 4 pages of pencils, and then at night I'll do a couple pages of inks.
Wow.
That's what I'm pushing myself to do. If I had done that earlier in the process, I'd be done now. But and then I have a couple colorists that are helping me, so I don't have to do that part.
Yeah, that takes a lot of the stress out of it too, because that is not my wheelhouse. I'll tell you that.
They are. Keep in mind, these are like 6x9 format pages for middle grade readers, so it's not like I'm not doing Watchmen here, right?
Right.
So
right.
It's a very cartoony style,
almost maybe a little bit more than a strip. In other words, in terms of strictly panel count,
it's not that much different than knocking out almost a week of strips in a day.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that 6x9 format, I don't know if you both have seen it, but I thought it was actually pretty clever. They have kind of reformatted all of Big Nate, if you guys know that comic strip, into that sort of 6x9 format. It works great on that page display. It's a really smart way to use it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, Scott, what we were thinking about doing today, since you're kind of an old hand at this, and by the way, I did check, you were darn close, Dave. The last official Webcomics Weekly was episode 84, which was titled, Are you ready for this? The last official show was called Reboot.
That tracks.
That was episode number 84, and then there were 4 more episodes. If you remember the Kickstarter for the Webcomics Handbook, you all agreed to come back and record another episode as a Kickstarter bonus. And so we had 4 more episodes together, and then that was it. So technically we made it up to 88. Okay. 88 episodes.
All right. Okay. It's pretty close.
But anyway, since
close.
Scott's kind of an old hand at this and
twice now,
has been doing this for a while.
Just thrown in old like it's nothing.
Well, we've all earned that word fair and square.
I guess so.
We figured we'd take some of our Patreon questions that come through us through patreon.com/ComicLab, and we would just kind of do our traditional show, just taking questions and trying to give our best answers. And to that end, here's one that I really kind of am interested, since we've got 3, I think, very different answers. This one came in from Tom, who says, hey, could you guys talk about your work setups? Based on earlier discussion about the Cintiq angle at your desks, I'm curious about how you guys work. Keyboard to the sides, Cintiq's keyboard mounted on top of the tablet, arms on your chairs. Basically, what Tom's looking for is, how do we have our studios set up to make the best possible production atmosphere? So Scott, starting out with you, how is your studio consciously set up?
I've got a great answer for a person whose name I already forgot. Tom. So what I do is I use a Cintiq that I purchased when I sold my book. I wisely used some of my advance money to buy a way too big Cintiq. My Cintiq was kind of end of life cycle for that tech. It was not, I don't even think it was one of the high def Cintiqs at the time. But I bought one of the new ones, and at the time I switched over to Clip Studio Paint. So I like my Cintiq to be up at at an angle. I like drawing on it almost like it's an easel, like someone painting on an easel, as opposed to down flat where I'm looking down. It helps with me not hunch my shoulders. But what really has saved me ergonomically is Clip Studio Paint makes something called the Tab Mate.
Yeah.
And this only works with Clip Studio Paint, but I know that there have been softwares that let you use it for Photoshop and stuff. But it basically looks like the old Nintendo Wii nunchuck remote.
It does,
That's exactly what I was going to say. It looks like a nunchuck.
It looks like the nunchuck from the Nintendo Wii, but it sits in your hand. It looks like a little video game controller. It's got a little trigger and a bunch of buttons on it. And this is what I hold in my non-drawing hand. And all of these buttons are programmed. It's got a scroll wheel on it for zooming in and out. And I have all my, brush, eraser, pen, increase, decrease of size of brush, rotate, recenter, undo, redo, eraser, all of that is here.
Oh, wow. It's got a lot on there.
Yeah. So that's all on this. And then rather than have my hand awkwardly sitting on a keyboard, because I was giving myself repetitive stress and all kinds of bad stuff. Just having the keyboard, especially on this with the Cintiq I bought that was this big, which was dumb. But even before that, I would always throw my shoulder out just with the hand on the keyboard. Now my hand just sits in my lap, and I just have the Tab Mate. So I think that device. It's a lifesaver. So
you said there was software now that can adapt it to Photoshop?
There is. I'd have to look it up. I'll find it so you can put it in the show notes. But there is a program that lets you use the Tab Mate for other.
Wow, because I've been jealous for a while because my Cintiq came with a remote. But in a way that I don't love, it is designed like a 1985 wired remote. Remember that first generation of TV remotes that had a wire coming out of it?
The Philips Magnavox remote,
Yeah, and it doesn't have any intuitive like haptic, like my thumb here is for, raising brush size or all the buttons are the same and it's one of my least favorite things about that Wacom is that remote. It doesn't do anything. I can't use it.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to ask you, because I got the same one. Well, I think I've got the 24 sitting over there, and I got that remote with it. I tried it for a day, and I literally had to print out like a chart that said, okay, this button's over here, so I could look at it and memorize, which one's undo, which one is, all those keys that I use all the time. And I put it aside immediately. Are you saying... Because I've got such muscle memory for Command Z, Command W, all those X, all the stuff that I'm using all the time. Are you saying that you were able to switch your brain over from that muscle memory to this tool a lot more easier?
Yeah, and the learning curve was real short.
Wow, I may have to get one now.
Well, it's clear what they did. They gamified it. It looks like every video game controller you've ever owned.
They made it a video game. Yeah, I mean, honestly, and as someone who has been there since the dawn of video games, it came supernatural to me to switch over. It really is been like one piece of just life-saving technology for me when it comes to this. It saved my shoulder. I also bought, I don't have it here because I stopped using it, but it's a little thing that clips onto your desk. It's like an arm. You know when you get an arm for your mic?
Yeah.
It's an arm for your arm. It basically comes out from your desk like a little support arm with a little like cup in it, and you lay your wrist on it, and it moves around.
Oh, that's nice.
So but that's really if you're using your mouse a lot.
Yeah.
That was to save me when I was playing PC video games. Other than that Tab Mate, man, you can do a lot with it. And there's you can do a whole set of commands for each key. And then there's a button at the bottom that switches from profile 1 to profile 2. And you can do a whole nother round of a whole nother set.
And looking at your studio layout right now, it looks like you're inside of almost a U-shaped desk. Am I guessing right there?
You are correct.
Desk to the left, desk to the right.
So I've got an IKEA L-shaped desk that kind of curves here in front of me.
Yeah.
Right. So I've got my Cintiq over here to my left. I've got my monitor that's my normal monitor. And then I have a set of shelves here that acts as kind of like the other side of my desk. My computer's on it. This is a keyboard that my buddy just bought me because I've known him since the 5th grade, and he feels like I have a musical ability that's going unpracticed. And then on the keyboard, I have what's left of my Christmas Reese's peanut butter cups. You weren't supposed to see that.
Cups, yeah.
And then this right here is a fan got this for me. Apparently, when you make Amazon wish lists, like tell your friends and family what you want for Christmas or stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently, you can make those public.
Yeah.
And anyone can buy you something. And I had a fan was like, "Hey, I see your wish list, but I don't have the ability to buy you anything." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" But I made the change for him, and he bought me this. This is a optical drive burner. It's a DVD burner, but it burns these specific DVDs. They're called M discs. So it's you know how DVDs really only last you like 20 years?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which when we were starting seemed like, well, I'll never live that long.
Right.
Apparently they've made data discs now in a format that lasts forever, like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So I can burn all the stuff I've drawn digitally for the last 15 to 20 years, put it on one of those, and I don't have kids, but if I did, my kids and grandkids would be able to access it.
Yeah.
Wow, that is bonkers. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, it doesn't degrade
Yeah.
the way that other physical media does. So,
And now I saw in the corner you've got a TV. Do you watch TV? Do you listen to TV while you're working? Is that something you like to do?
that is this whole side of the studio is kind of the setup that was left over from when this was my dad's apartment down here. And I do have that TV on occasionally, normally only when something is happening on CNN that I want to watch, like when they were doing the January 6th stuff.
Yeah.
I had that on the background. Most of the time I'm just listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
Or music when I draw. I like listening to people talk while I draw. I like to feel like I miss being around people, so I like feeling like I'm in a studio environment.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
So and the worst part is I've not listened to your podcast for a long time. So I have so much ComicLab to catch up on, and it was like, oh, I'm hanging out with you guys. And the only frustrating thing about listening to ComicLab is I will be screaming at you guys. Because that effect of when you listen to a podcast and you feel like you're part of the conversation, but they can't hear you and you're screaming at them and you're like, it's this. I know the answer to this. It's this. That is, let me tell you, when you actually know the people, when you're friends with the people on the podcast, and you could call them, I can't tell you how many times I've had to stop myself from you guys just getting a call like, oh, hey, Scott, what's going on? And I go, it's called this. Click.
I appreciate though that your complaining voice becomes like a smoker of 40 years. Like, I won't tell you kids what you're doing wrong there.
Actually, Brad, it was the yellow kid that first appeared. And I become some like 1800s prospector.
Yeah.
So, Brad, to give us a quick tour of your studio, what is your physical setup around there?
I've got a long studio with high ceilings, which sometimes isn't always the best. But I can see one thing different from my studio from both of yours. You both have a lot of natural light. I on the other hand, like working in a cave. I've got one window over there. The shades are always drawn. and I like being sealed in. This is my safe space, you know. One thing I did that was kind of smart, way back when I was trying to hire an assistant, I bought 2 desks and I have basically 2 workstations. And the assistant didn't work out, but I kept the workstations because now I've got basically 4 different computers running at any one time. And so I've got my drawing station over there. I've got kind of a podcasting station over here. It's not a bad setup. And much like you, I've surrounded myself. I've got tons of like original art, stuff that I've framed, stuff that people have given me, stuff that I've picked up along the way. And so I've got comic art all around here, which just makes me feel happy. My biggest problem that that I constantly try to solve is, like Scott, I like my Cintiq at a very steep angle, almost, I wouldn't say completely up and down, but very close to that, right? Steeper even than like a 45-degree angle. It's very steep. And I've only got one light, and it's a long fluorescent light that's at the ceiling. Casts a nasty glare on the Cintiq, and there's just no way around it. So a lot of times when I'm drawing, I turn the lights off. I've got a couple of desk lamps and a floor lamp behind me. I'll turn those on just for a little ambient glow so I can see my keyboard while I'm working. And I spend most of my days in the dark.
Yeah.
just sitting in front of the Cintiq in a darkened room, happily just drawing away. And like you, I was watching TV, or putting TV on in the background, which was great, but I think I was spending more time paying attention to it than I realized. Because when I finally got tired of TV, I started doing the same thing: podcasts, audio books. I'm a big audiobook guy. Music, and I found my production ticked up quite a bit. Like,
you can do audiobooks when you draw?
Oh, I love audiobooks.
Oh, man.
But only when I'm inking. Like when I'm penciling or when I'm writing, I got to have silence because, with this brain, I got my hands full. But when I'm inking, I can have anything going. So audiobooks have been a big plus for me, at least. And then I can kind of get my stuff done. But now, Dave, that's very different from yours, because I know you've got a lot of natural light.
Yes. So unlike the Balrog who over there, who was one of the fallen Maiar there, who liked living in the dark. No, so I have a smallish studio that I very much am happy with. It's in my house like Scott, and it's at the front of the house. So much like Hitchcock's Rear Window, I'm always looking out the window right next to my desk. Yeah. Be like, oh, postman's 3 minutes later than he was yesterday. Like, I've become this like 65-year-old, like, hello, Margaret, good to see you. How lovely. Because I'm standing right at the window all day long. But my entire studio, since I had a lot of problems with repetitive stress injury about 7 years ago in my right shoulder, I've moved my entire studio to be a standing workspace. So I have my standing drawing table that my brother built for me. And then I have a standing treadmill that I do all my administrative stuff on. And then I just bought a stand, like a 6-foot standing work table. Because we used to have these things at Mattel that were like meeting tables that you could also do projects on. And I realized I didn't have like a project space, like just a big clear project space to, I don't know, just lay stuff out, cut stuff, glue stuff, all that sort of stuff. So I got a big table that's on wheels. I can roll around to different parts of the studio. So for me, it's mostly a standing situation. And then the drawing standing desk has 2 ways I can draw. I can do Sheldon traditionally on a light boxed, sort of cantilevered, it lifts and drops down wood and light box setup. And then on an arm, I can swivel in the Wacom, and it can sit on top of the light box area. So I can draw, both of them can tilt. And I would say my Wacom setup is not the greatest ergonomically. Like, I'm feeling like I'm torquing more than I need to get to my keyboard, and it's not a great setup. So I think I'm going to install some kind of keyboard tray that can slide out from way underneath and pop up when I'm doing my Wacom stuff. But that's, and like Brad, I'm surrounded by original art all around my studio. And what's funny is I totally forget that it's there until I ever redo my studio. And then I'm like, oh, there's a lot of nice art. And then I become totally blind to it for the next 5 years again. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot I had that piece. Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Are you still using the walking desk? Last time I was there, you had a treadmill set up to a desk. Are you still using that?
Yes. Yeah. And, but I will say, I will go 6 months and forget that it exists. So it's not even in the room, Brad. Who even knew that there was a treadmill in this? But then I'll be like, no,
I'd
you know
use
what?
a treadmill if I had one, but I just don't have. Oh, there it is.
You use it for the
clothes hanger.
bullshit task. Like, oh, I've got to answer 10 emails, or I've got to do a bunch of forum responses, or I need to do a bunch of scheduling for my comic for the next month or two. And you just hop on the treadmill. And honest to God, even though I'm not in great shape, but you don't even pay attention, and suddenly you've walked a mile and a half, 2 miles without even really paying attention. And like you're like, why am I not doing this all the time? And then I'll do it again, and then I'll forget and go for 6 months without using it. And anyway, that's my story. But anyway, I'm very happy with my standing setup now, and I highly recommend it for anybody that's thinking about it.
All right. We've got another question from one of our Patreon backers. And again, I kind of chose this, Dave. It's so good that Scott's on the show, because I think I don't know that I have a good answer for it, but I know Scott's going to. So this is going to be good that you're here. This one coming in from J Lark, who says, sometimes I feel like some of my characters have a very similar voice, even when I try to give them different personalities. Can you talk about how to give each character in a comic a distinctive voice? What are some tips for doing so without inflating word count in our balloons? What role can accents, catchphrases, or other mannerisms play without overdoing it? Finally, how can a character's dialogue work together with the visuals of a comic to help make their voice distinctive? So basically, this comes down to the voice of a character, something that I think I struggle with an awful lot. I think sometimes my characters can sound very similar, but you do really well. You do great at giving a character a distinctive voice. So what's your approach to this?
I also, by the way, support throwing Scott under the bus on this one and letting him answer first. I think
Are you asking me? You think I'm good at this?
No, yeah, we think you should answer this first.
Oh,
I'm talking to you. I want to hear what you've got to say.
I thought you were talking to Dave, because I like all of the distinct voices in the Sheldon characters. But so one of the things I try to figure out with all of my characters is, and if I answer this question and stick to it, it helps more. So I feel like some of the original characters of PvP, their voices tend to blend more than the newer ones, because I didn't learn this until I got further in.
Yeah.
But if you take a moment to sit down and do this little exercise and ask yourself 2 things about each character. What does my character want? And what does my character need? If you're having a hard time answering those questions, then you should do it first with a TV show that you've watched a lot of. Yeah. So, for example, I've watched every season of The Office multiple times.
Right.
It's kind of my comfort go-to play in the background show. So let's take Michael Scott. What does Michael Scott want? Michael Scott wants to be loved by everybody. And what does he need? He needs to stop trying so hard.
Yeah.
Right? What does Jim want? Jim wants to not be in this boring situation, this kind of dead-end boring situation. What does he need? He needs to realize it's actually better than he thinks it is. Right? Like, when you can identify those 2 things, it helps you with their voice, where they're coming from, and also helps you with situations and how they'll act in those situations. And I think that's a big part of the voice, is knowing when you put a character in a situation, how are they going to respond to it? Right. So with my characters, for example, you put Cole in a situation, he's going to try to solve everybody's problem, and he's going to panic about it. Everything's kind of a crisis to him. You put Brent in that situation, he's going to try to act like he's not thrown by the situation. He's going to throw a lot of snark at you, and he's going to act like he's kind of too cool for school when it comes to that stuff, at least early Brent. Skull is going to be very naive about it. He's probably going to understand the situation incorrectly, right?
Mhm.
So that's, I think when you set those things up early and kind of remember them and have them maybe even written down somewhere, and you approach it with that, it helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, you're another person that does this amazingly well. What's your approach to a character voice?
Well, it's interesting to hear you both say that you thought that I do it well, and I'm not being falsely humble. I actually don't, in my own mind, think that I do it well, and maybe this is the trick of feeling too close to all of your characters, such that they feel like they're meshing together because they're all somewhat aspects of yourself, not really, but somewhat, right? So I appreciate that you both are saying that because I don't feel that. But anyway, I'll tell you what I do. The best thing that I ever did, especially with Drive, was write character Bibles. And I mentioned that not to say that I have ever pulled out that character Bible again, having written it. I have never looked at it again once I wrote them. But it was really good for me to get down on paper what was their backstory, where did they come from, what parts of the story will never be revealed but are like deeply centered in who they are. You know, like this person desperately misses their dead mother. They're never going to mention it, but it's desperately important to them in terms of who they are, right? That kind of thing. And so I wrote up that Bible, have never looked at it again, but it's one of those things that it's an activity that once you've done it, it informs everything else you do because you put in the time thinking about it, right? Yeah. And then another thing that I do, because it's kind of a touchstone that I do call on weekly when I'm writing Drive, is I try to reduce characters to one word such that I can sort of do a check-in with myself of like, is this who they are? And kind of what that word might be is, you know, when they always say people's true self comes out in a moment of anxiety or real stress, like, oh my God, there's a fire. Some people will default to self-preservation. Some people will default towards command, like, let's get everybody out of here safely. Some people will default towards panic, right? And in some respects, that's how I try to like crystallize certain characters. I have some characters that are ultimately about optimism. That's what they're about. They're about optimism. Other people are about concern. That's their one word that's like crystallizing for them. Another one might be creativity. That's the crystallizing word for who they are and how they react to situations is creativity. And so that's how I do it.
It's the Hogwarts school test. It's what my niece does with me.
Yeah, exactly.
My niece, to determine what Hogwarts school I was in, because it was very important to my niece, she gave me a problem to solve. And the problem was, you come to a locked door and you have to get through it. How do you do it? What's the first thing you think to do? And if you like knock it down, you're Gryffindor. If you pick the lock, you're Slytherin. If you knock to see if anyone will let you in, you're Hufflepuff.
That's true. That's a great example of it. Yeah. And then also, and this is trickier, but I'm sure that all three of us had this, is that sometimes no matter how good the punchline is, or no matter how good the story point is, you have to be true to, would the character actually say this versus defaulting to the punch? Like I told Brad last week, I had a punchline that was so perfect for Drive. It was like, it was so funny, but I couldn't use it because the two characters that had to be in that scene, neither one of them would ever say that phrase. Like it would never pass their lips. And like sometimes as a writer, you just know it when you know it, and you have to honor it. You can't like cheat it for the story, or else you ruin that character for that moment, you know? So that's for me. For Brad, how about you? How do you try to differentiate your voices and stay true to the characters?
I'll tell you what, I'll just be, I divide them up by cup size, of course. No, for me, I'm a hack. I freely admit I'm a hack when it comes to this, because I don't know that this is a strength. But what I do is try to rely on archetypes. Right? Like what character archetype is this? Is this a healer? Is this a conniver? Is this a wild card type character? And I've got kind of, where you have a character Bible, I have kind of a rolling character Bible. These are different sheets that get Xeroxed and pasted into every new sketchbook as I'm starting a new sketchbook. And the number of pages just gets exponentially larger and larger because it's things that I want to remember, storyline points. I love that it's
Xerox, though. That's so old school. It's like, I mimeograph it and then use a paste up tool.
I still remember how good mimeograph machines used to smell. I'd bring that back in a heartbeat. But so like what I've got a little grid with all my main characters with a bunch of little factoids written down below each one of them. And one of them is archetype material. Like, for example, and not only will I put an archetype, but I'll put like one or two characters from other media that this character reminds me of.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
I've got one character that I've got Groucho Marx and Dan Fielding written down there. All right. So when I write this character and I'm writing their dialogue, I'll think, well, how would Groucho deliver that? How would Dan Fielding deliver that? What would their response be? That sort of thing. And it's not quite trying to recreate a Dan Fielding character, but it gets my head pointed in the right direction so I can go that way, right?
Yeah.
And I still say, and I know I'm going to be preaching to the choir here because I know how both of you feel about this, but I think archetype work was what made Golden Girls one of the best sitcoms of all time because those archetypes were so freaking solid that you could build entire stories. Just you drop a situation, throw those 3 or 4 archetypes in, and run with it.
You told me the other day, Brad, that you had seen a TV writer break down what the archetypes were for the Golden Girls. Can you just go through that real quick? Like one was chaos, one was...
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what the.
Oh, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought it was so well done in terms of a breakdown, but it doesn't matter that if we don't have it.
If I remember right, B. Arthur's character was the leader, right? And she's kind of like the straight for this, right? She's the setup, but she's also a leader. She's always kind of very straightforward. Rose Nyland is what I would call, and Scott, help me out here. I call this character the magical idiot, right? Because they always, they're that character we see so much in pop culture where they're an absolute idiot, yet everything's going to be okay for them, right?
Kind of like Star-Lord in a way, yeah.
Remember Todd in BoJack Horseman? He's like a prototypical magical idiot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I call that a magical idiot. Blanche is a seducer, without a doubt. And then Estelle Getty's character, Sophia, they had it written to the show where she had a stroke, so she had no filter. So anything just came out of her mouth. That makes her a classic wild card archetype, right? Anything can happen because you don't know what's going to come out of her mouth next. So that's the 4 archetypes that I've got those characters nailed under.
Well, I want to build on this because this is kind of a fun thing to talk about. So one thing that I do, like Brad, certain characters or certain walk-on people, I'll be like, all right, this is a Will Ferrell type. Like, how would Will Ferrell deliver these lines? Or how would Paul Rudd deliver these lines? Yeah. But have you guys ever done this? I've actually taken advantage of both of your personalities when I'm trying to work a punchline. Have you ever guys done this where it'd be like, all right, I have the Dave Kelly punchline. How would Scott write this? How would Brad write this? Like, I'm to kind of run it through a different filter of like trying to step out of who I am. I've actually used your personalities to be like, hey, how would they do that? How would they approach this storyline? What would they do? And it's funny how sometimes that actually triggers ideas.
I'll do that when I'm stuck every now and again. I'll be like, I don't know how I'm going to write this. And then I'll revert to 2 that always get me started. How would Larry David write this scene? And how would Mel Brooks write this scene? Right? Because those are very distinctive, writing voices. Now we're talking writing voices as opposed to character voice, but they're very distinctive approaches to comedy that also have a lot of similarities. But I'll do that. Scott, what's your approach to that?
I do something that's similar to what you do and instead of thinking of a person or a specific writer, I think of a particular show. Yeah. PvP specifically is such a, love letter evolution of redheaded stepchild to the sitcoms that I grew up loving. Yeah. It's all of the comedy is rooted in the sitcoms that I grew up finding just so funny and very clever. And so I default to those. I default to the Night Court and the news radios. Mm-hmm. And the voice that they're written in and the both the funny and touching moments in each of those. because both of those shows did that pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to think about the way shows do things as opposed to, the voice of a particular ensemble. I do that a lot.
Yeah. So you're taking more of a macro view as opposed to a micro view.
My wife always points this out to me, is when we're watching a show, she can tell when I'm watching the show or when I'm working. And because if I find something really, really clever in a show, I immediately start dissecting it and I'm done watching it. And we were really into Schitt's Creek. I don't know if you've watched that show.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, this changes everything, this show, because he's just written Schitt's Creek, the town, to be the way that he wishes things were.
Yeah.
Because like in that show, his Levy, not Eugene, his son, I can't think of his name now.
Okay. We can go with
but his character David is gay and falls in love with the guy there in the town, and they're going to get married. And it's a small little, like the whole central premise of the show is it's a podunk, unsophisticated town.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that anyone else would write it as everyone in that town having a problem with a gay couple. No one in the town had a problem with the gay couple. And I heard Dan Levy say, we just wrote that as a place that the way we want it to be.
Right. Right.
Not necessarily the way that it is, just to give an example of the way it could be. And that really made me go, I want to do that.
I got to ask you, since you brought it up, Night Court, the reimagined Night Court.
I want to talk about it.
Do you have thoughts?
It's awful. It's terrible. It's completely unfunny. It's completely forced. I don't know if there's one joke in the whole damn thing, and it's devoid of everything that made the original special. Not to mention they rebooted a show where everyone on it that was on it originally is dead or retired, mostly dead,
except for Dan Fielding, who they got John Larroquette.
Yeah, they got Larroquette, but you can't do Dan Fielding anymore.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Or you could, but they didn't. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would think that if you're going to reboot Night Court and you have the daughter of Abby Stone or the daughter of Harry Stone coming to the same Night Court, and the only person available is John Larroquette, your first thought in the writer's room is, okay, she needs help. You bring in Dan Fielding, and she's got to deal with the fact that this Kai is this relic, and she's got to deal with his misogyny.
And he's inappropriate.
And he's inappropriate and out of control.
Yeah.
And you get to make those jokes because you get to have everyone go, Dan, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Is Richard
Mall? And you also then get to make fun of conservatives. Nah, he's retired. He's not in it.
Okay, I was gonna say, but he's not. He's still alive.
No, they didn't. They've swapped it. They've made him like, I don't know, like he's changed. And there's another character that's constantly being inappropriate to him.
Yeah,
like in the gallery. I don't know. It's awful. Terrible.
Well, let me jump us into our next question. This comes in from Cruz Esparza over at patreon.com/ComicLab. And it says, Dear Scott, what do you do if you find yourself to be a serviceable writer and artist, but your art style doesn't match the mood you tend to write in? Do you challenge yourself to change your writing to fit your art to fit your writing? Or do you backseat one as a hobby and pursue the other as a career and just hire out the other half of your work? By the way, this book goes out to Brad. Thanks for all the great advice, and it was great seeing you in Santa Rosa. Would love to see you two do more in-person events. Well, hopefully we can, Cruz. That would be much to our love. But Scott, writing for you, when you first went from PvP maybe to Teen Titans, or to Teen Titans.
I did go straight to Teen Titans.
When you went to Table Titans, did you find that some of your voice didn't match your art and your art didn't match your voice and you had to work on one or the other or modify?
It was absolutely that. One of the things that I learned immediately was that it didn't really happen until the second book of Table Titans. The first book, I did a lot of cheating, and I kept obviously the part of the story where it's friends at a table playing a role-playing game, I can handle that art. I know how to stage that. I know that.
Yeah.
But the part of the story where I'm showing you what it's like to be in the fantasy world. Now we're talking more of a widescreen story, right? We're Lord of the Rings. Now we're vistas and monsters and all this kind of an action. And that's not something I'm super well versed in. But I pulled my punches in book 1 to kind of get around that. I didn't want to do it in book 2, and I was struggling. So what I did was I hired my buddy Brian Hurt, who does work in that style. He is the artist for the among other things, the Oni Press book, The Six Gun.
Yeah.
And so he sat with us. We brought him in on book 2 because he really loved Table Titans, and we brainstormed story ideas, and the fantasy element part of the story, we really got cinematic with it. And every time I said, I don't know if I can draw that, he's like, don't worry about it. He did breakdowns for me. So he basically took my script and then thumbnailed it. So I got thumbnails from Brian, which really is not a finished pencil. Thumbnails are they're not quite stick figures. Brian can't really bring himself to just draw stick figures, but it's a very shorthand version of a drawing of the way a page breaks down.
Yeah.
But it helped me, I think specifically because it wasn't very detailed, it helped me kind of understand how to break down a script into more cinematic looks. So that helped me. And then when I went to do it again, it was easier for me. So I kind of went in between doing it myself and hiring someone to do it for me.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the reason why, and I think book 2 of Table Titans looks way better than book 1. The reason why is because I built it on top of Brian's thumbnails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, how do you approach something like this if you feel like your art doesn't match your writing? Because I've got a feeling that might have been something that in the early days, at least, you may have grappled with in Drive.
I don't know why I took that as an insult. Like, I'm flipping through book 1 right now, and it looks like you're grappling. I'm assuming, right, that you're grappling? Because I'm seeing grappling. No, I mean, here's the thing, Brad. You're right. Is that I was actually really happy to see Scott describe it the way he did, because I think he said it perfectly, is that I cheated because I didn't yet have the tool set when my art didn't match my, what's a better way to say it? Like, my writing was picking fights that my art couldn't win, if that makes sense.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Like, I knew I wanted to write this incredible, like, I don't know, space battle or these incredible aliens. And then my, it would be like those TikTok videos where it cuts to, oh, no. And you're just like, oh, geez Louise. And so, the truth is, so I've been doing Drive for about a decade. It took me 4 or 5 years of like consciously going, I've got to level up. I've got to become a better artist. And I'm not yet who I want to be art-wise, but I'm getting so much better than I was when I started Drive, such that now weak points that when I started the story, like my spaceships, not great. My aliens, okay. Now I take real pride in them. Like, I had a sequence the other day with a bunch of different aliens fighting it out. And I was like, oh, this is among some of the best stuff I've ever drawn. Yeah. And it came out great. And my spaceships are getting more and more unique and interesting. And so I've been really happy with it on that front.
I want to point something out real quick, because to everyone listening, that is the secret sauce right there.
Yeah.
And I know that we all grow up, we all want to break into comics. And we all focus on, how do I break in? And you see the comic industry, you see people doing things, see new things coming out, and you feel like it's this big train that's going so fast that you don't know how to jump on it. There is no secret. The only secret sauce is consistency. And if Dave wasn't willing to have a couple years worth of drawings he wasn't satisfied with, he never would have gotten to the drawings that he is, where he can now feel like he can do this. And I really didn't feel like until I was 15, 20 years into drawing comics that I could even tackle something like Table Titans. And I still wasn't ready for it. But if I wasn't willing to not only draw, but post and share the pages that just weren't up to snuff yet, I never would have gotten to where I wanted to be. And I think that is the key. That's what makes you pro. That's what makes you in it to win it, for lack of a better phrase, is that you have the courage to know that no one's a harder critic on your work than yourself. No one ever spends as much time looking at this stuff. They don't notice all the flaws you see. You've got to have the courage to post that work you don't like, because that's the only way to get to the next drawing that that lets you unlock the happy accidents that make you go, make those connections, and then get to draw the stuff that you wanted to draw when you started, but didn't have the tool set for.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, I was not ready to start drawing Drive, and it's really nice to hear you feel that you were not ready to start drawing Table Titans either. But I knew I knew I wanted to do it, so there was the drive of wanting to do it, but also there was kind of a willingness to be embarrassed, if that makes sense. Like I knew, and I did have critics who'd be like, "You're not the right artist to draw this science fiction strip," and in a lot of respects, looking back on it, I wasn't yet, but I had to do it. And do it in real time to get better. I couldn't just say, I'll put this off for 5 years. I had to kind of stumble my way through it for 5 years to get better, such that now my spaceships, my aliens, my environments are all better and where I'd like them to be.
Have you guys seen that that clip? I don't know why he did it, but Ethan Hawke did a thing about creativity and giving yourself permission to be creative.
No.
I'll send you a link. You can put it in the show notes. You've got to give yourself permission to be creative. He talks about a poet that was kind of counterculture, and he went on like a real mainstream show and did his poetry. And afterwards, all of his buddies in the counterculture were like, they're all laughing at you. And he said, yeah, that's my job. I'm a poet.
Yeah.
They're supposed to go to their day job, their 9 to 5, their in the system thing and hate it and look at me and go, who the hell is he to go on TV and do that? And he was talking about how art is a luxury until you don't know how to deal with something where, someone you love breaks up with you, your parent dies, then you need to know how to, and then all of a sudden art is a necessity. It's vital. And he talks about the whole point of art is you are making a fool of yourself. You have to be willing to go out there and make a fool of yourself.
Wow.
Because that's the point, You got to make those mistakes publicly.
Well, speaking of Brad, do you want to talk a little bit about how you... No, I mean, okay, joking aside, we hadn't gotten to your version of how you would answer this, and I would like to hear it, actually.
No, I'm going to underscore everything both of you said. And listen, in terms of what the theme that Scott just got done, all you've got to do is take a look at my early stuff in Greystone Inn and take a look at the stuff that I'm doing now. It's night and day different. And there's no way I could have gotten to where I'm doing stuff that I'm really proud of if I wasn't doing that. And again, learning every time. Somebody asked me in my Patreon, I was doing an Ask Me Anything, and they were talking about, the development of an artistic style. And I said, really, it's just doing it over and over and over again and not being quite satisfied until just one day, all of a sudden you draw a nose just right. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's how I draw a nose, right? It's not how John Buscema draws a nose. It's not how Burke Breathed draws a nose. But all of a sudden, boom, this is how I draw a nose. And this works for me. This works in the overall pattern of what I'm trying to get to. And then you draw a whole bunch of characters that aren't so good, but the noses are better. And then you just keep going until finally you have a breakthrough on something else, some other facet, compositions or shading or line quality. But none of us start at this thing being where we want to be. We all have a place that we're trying to go. And I don't know if too many people who ever get there. I think if you talk to an 80-year-old cartoonist who's still cranking this stuff out, they're still trying to get someplace. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Brad, because part of the way this question was asked is a version of saying like that you don't feel like you're the right artist to draw this scene, this splash page, this battle, this whatever it is, right? That you're writing or your art. I know that you must be like me, where you're sometimes drawing an Evil Inc. scene going, I wish John Buscema could draw this, like I wish John Byrne could draw this scene. But part of it, and this is building off what Scott was saying earlier, part of it is building up the confidence to being like, no, Brad Geiger needs to draw this scene. This is actually the right artist to draw this scene. People want to see this in my style.
Actually had that happen. I got to work with the late, great Neil Adams.
Oh,
I going to comic book conventions, San Diego's all those years. His granddaughter was a fan of PvP, and they're big, the Neil Adams booth, and his son Jason and his granddaughter and his daughter. We talk to the Adams all the time every year. And he's like, at one point he goes, well, my granddaughter says I have to do a cover for your comic. And I go, I don't do that comic anymore. And he goes, so Kim contacted me and said, Neil really wants to work with you. And I know that you don't do covers anymore, but he used to do a syndicated comic strip, and he really wants to do something like that again. And I'm like, he used to do a syndicated comic strip. He did a comic strip for the TV show Ben Casey, MD.
Oh, really? Wow. That is a deep cut.
It is a deep cut. And I said, cool, I'm about to do a storyline where Kringus kills Santa.
Yeah.
And why don't we do a riff on that Fantastic Four where they kill Galactus, and Reed Richards like, oh no, we got to save Galactus. And so they realize they got to save Santa, and they bring in Ben Casey, and Neil can draw it.
Wow.
And so I got to work with him on that. And there's listen, I got to work with Neil Adams, and we were sending digital files back and forth, and he was taking my comic strip and drawing little pieces in on it. There's nothing to complain about there.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic.
But just so you know how an artist's brain works. Even when you're working with Neil effing Adams, at some point your brain's going to go, I should have just drawn this damn thing myself. I am not enjoying this. I am not enjoying the choices he's making. I wouldn't have done it that way. And then you go, what are you saying? Stop it.
Yeah. Well, listen, Scott, I got to tell you, we're running out of time, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to thank you profusely for joining us on the show. This has been, speaking of career highlights, this has been one for me. If people want to find out more about you, come on, that sounded honest, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I'm bowled over by the sincerity of that. Can't get you to take my calls.
If people want to find out more about Scott Kurtz and what he's up to, ToonhoundStudios.com, newly redesigned. You're one of the folks using the Tucheki CMS now as well.
Oh, yeah.
And,
thank you, Brian Lee, too.
And we can find out more at Toonhound Studios. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. It's been good for my heart to have you back. This has been
I miss you guys.
Fantastic. And so I get to say you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my good friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped, and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where we're still a top comics podcast, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
And ComicLab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/ComicLab. So we'll go ahead and forget that and say the other thing, ToonhoundStudios.com.
I meant that sincerely.
I know. I'm sure. Your eyes and your speech.
What's great about that is now we're gonna get off the phone with Brad later this week. We'll be like, all right, Brad, well, good talking to you. I gotta tell you, Brad, it's been a career highlight chatting with you on the phone today.
Talking to you tonight.